I'll throw Iran in too.
The way I would look at it, Brett, is, I've always admired the way you do questions, by the way. I'll just throw it in. Because he goes to the heart of the issue. He doesn't dance around with his own opinion. You know what I mean? It goes straight to the issue. Here, I would break it down three ways: power, urgency, and will. In terms of urgency, North Korea is the problem. We have got to address that issue. It's an urgent issue. That's why the United Nations has Security Council resolutions that are unanimous. How many times, ladies and gentlemen, do you see repeatedly China, France, the United Kingdom, Russia, the United States, and more, all voting with one voice? Okay, so think what that says about the urgency of this issue in Korea. Second, I would talk about power, raw power. When you look at Russia and the cavalier use of force, the cavalier discussions about nuclear weapons, clearly Russia needs to be dissuaded, deterred from going down a path that too often Putin appears willing to go down. When you look at will, I've had several meetings with my Chinese counterpart, and there is no doubt in my mind that China wants to return to what it believes is its rightful place in the world as a great nation. And I believe that we're going to have to find ways to work with China, two nuclear-armed powers, superpowers, in a manner that when we step on each other's toes, which may happen from time to time, we have a way to manage those issues. And we are working quietly and, I would say, quite closely together. My Chinese counterpart, myself, Secretary Pompeo, and State Councilor Yang, we are working on trying to craft that way ahead. We're looking for cooperation where we can with China. We will confront them where we must. But it is not our desire to end up in that situation. It's to find a way to manage a new relationship. I believe 10 years from now, 15 years from now, what the Trump administration will be most remembered for, were we able to create that new way to operate with China? Were we able to create a mechanism by which we could maneuver on the world stage economically, diplomatically, security-wise, and keep the peace and not stumble into a miscalculation?
Mr. Secretary, I only have a couple more minutes left, so this is a bit of a lightning round here. Will you sign the extension orders for the nearly 6,000 active duty troops at the U.S. southern border that the DHS has asked for?
Right. We've just received, since I left yesterday to talk to our Air Force Academy cadets, and on my way out here, we've just received Secretary Nielsen's request. She's the Secretary of Homeland Security, of course. I will review it when I get back. Some things have been done, completed. This is the engineer work to put in certain crowd control capabilities. We have no troops in a law enforcement capacity. As you know, it's prohibited under the U.S. Constitution. Remember here, and I will review it, Brett, and I'll make certain that what we're doing is appropriate for our troops, and if it is, and Border Patrol needs the help, of course we'll provide it. But look back to when President Clinton deployed troops along the border in order to maintain control over immigration. Look back to when President Bush was the longest duration deployment of federal troops on the border were under President Obama. 7 years they were deployed there. So we'll look at it. If there's a specific issue that requires Department of Defense support for the Commissioner of Border Patrol, then of course we'll provide that. But we'll stay strictly within the Constitution, strictly within our laws, and the law enforcement functions will be carried out by the appropriate people, either the Border Patrol or U.S. Marshals or other federal police, but not by the U.S. military.
All right, last thing. The president was asked in an interview whether he was going to fire you or you were going to leave. First he called you a Democrat, or sort of a Democrat. Then he said, everybody leaves, people leave Washington, but you have a good relationship. So do you have any plans to leave the administration soon?
Well, if I did, Brett, you wouldn't be the one to know, okay? But ladies and gentlemen, let me explain something. When the President of the United States, Republican or Democrat, male, female, none of that matters. When the President of the United States, and I'd never met Mr. Trump until I met him as President-elect when he called me back for a job interview. When the President of the United States asks you to do something in America, you just do it. To quote Nike, just do it. Don't get all caught up in the Hamlet, wishing and wondering and wringing your hands or something like that and saying, I'm going to do or not to do or whatever. Just do it. Get up, go up, do your job to the best of your ability, uphold the Constitution, give the President your best military advice in my case. But, you know, we've got to get back to the point where service in this country is something you do. I mean, tell you the truth, the only reason I'm back in this low-paying outfit is because I love the troops, because I learned to hate minefields at age 21, but I love guys so valiant they would go through looking for something they didn't want to find, they didn't want their buddy behind them to step on it. And the other reason is I got a love affair with the U.S. Constitution. I'll just leave it at that.
All right, let's leave it at that, because there is obviously there's no national draft. This is the last thing. You mentioned it here. There's fewer than 0.5% of Americans currently serve in the U.S. military. Fewer than 9% have ever served. So many Americans don't have a close connection at all to someone who is serving or has served. So the civilian-military divide is expanding. How do you get people who don't have a connection to buy in? Is that a concern for you?
It is a concern. I think many of us, when the draft had developed such a poor reputation for whatever reason, Vietnam, for unfairness, and we got rid of it, many of us in those days wondered, would this turn out to be very good for the military and the all-volunteer? I should describe it as the all-recruited, because there's vigorous recruiting that goes on. Military has been very good. You know, we have all volunteers there. But would it end up being good for the Republic? Would it divorce us from the body politic? Would people make decisions quite smug in the fact that none of their family members would be in harm's way? We've got to consider it, ladies and gentlemen. We can't hide from that elephant in the room. I think if, on a broader level, we can get back to a fundamental friendliness with one another as Americans, if we can rediscover a respect for each other as fellow Americans, even if we have very different ideas about how we take the country forward, we probably don't have big differences about where we want to go, ultimately. So if we can create a society in which respect and friendliness is the passport that we all have when we meet each other, whether it be in our school districts or in our businesses or public life or private life, if we can get back to that, then the military is part of that society, representing the most selfless, who literally will go in harm's way for us, will not seem alien anymore. They'll seem like your own brothers and sisters. At that point, whether they belong to your family, your immediate family, or your larger American family, I think we can keep this thing together that we call America. And it's just one great big experiment. But it's noble work, even if it's hard work, and we better all go back to finding a way to embrace one another. And in the military, we're not that special. We're simply patriots who decide this is the way we pay our dues. And a country's like a bank. If you want to take something out of it, if you want to get something out, if you want economic opportunity, your kids to go to college, you got to put something into it. And there's 100 different ways to serve, but the military, the most selfless, has got to remain embraced by the American people, whether you have a member in the military or you do not. But thank you very much.
Mr. Secretary, thank you for your service to the country, and thank you for this. And I'd love to have you on Special Report sometime. Thank you.
Defense Secretary James Mattis telling earlier that the